You see what this, you see what this says, kids. This says square root of 320 million. And that would be 17,888. I want you to please remember this, folks. Remember that figure. All right, so we see here, whoa, I don't want Pareto Principle dating. I just want Pareto. What the heck, Pareto Principle dating? Sorry about that, folks. That's a little comic relief. But anyway, so we're going to look at the Pareto Principle. Now, this is, all right, this is what it looks like on the Googles, on top of the Googles when you do a Google search. The 80-20 principle. It's roughly 80% of it comes from, yeah, okay. So that's the 80-20 rule. I find myself saying the 80-20 rule, and then I catch myself because there's something about this Pareto principle that is maybe this one will explain it. Let's just see. That people just aren't really. So here we go. Principle is the observation. Most things in life are not distributed evenly. 20% of input creates 80% of the result. 20% of the workers produce 80% of the results, etc. But be careful when using this idea. First, there's a common misconception. The number 20 and 80 must add to 100. They don't. 20% of the workers could create 10% of the results, or 50%, or 80%, or 80% and 90%. Think about it. In a group of 100 workers, 20 could do all the work while the other 80 goof off. Okay, whatever. In that case, 20% of the workers did 100% of the work. Remember that the 80-20 rule is a rough guide about typical redistributions. Now, I'm not seeing it here, and I can't find this, so you're going to have to kind of trust me a little bit with this. Yeah. The Pareto Principle isn't that, it's not the 80-20 rule. The Pareto Principle goes much deeper than that. The Pareto Principle. Let's see if somebody mentions it here. Square. Let's see. Let's just see if we get into that. Okay, he's going to talk about that. Jordan Peterson talks about it. And then you got somebody over here saying, no, Jordan Peterson lies about it. Okay, the Pareto square root law is sometimes offered as a property or as a similar to the Pareto. Okay, so there's a good, square root law. However, the law only holds in that case. Note that in this case, the total and expected amount of wealth are not defined, and the rule only applies asymptomatically to random. Okay, what the heck does that all mean? Let's dive in here. Is a power law probability distribution that is used in description of social, scientific. Okay, I'm not going to read all this. Originally applied to describing the distribution of wealth in a society, fitting the trend. Okay, the Pareto distribution has colloquially become known as, again, the principle or the 80-20 rule. Also the Matthew principle. However, the Pareto distribution only produces this result for a particular power value. A equals, I don't even understand what that means. While A is a variable, empirical observation has found the 80-20 distribution to fit a wide range of cases, including natural phenomena and human activities. So, now as I understand the Pareto principle, it can be, and actually I did learn this from Jordan Peterson. And he's actually, it is where I learned about the Pareto principle, but, I then looked into it on my own. And what I understand with all of this complicated math, I don't even understand any of it. Generalized Pareto distribution. Basically, you can kind of sum it up to, it's not that 20% produces 80%. It's that the square root of the number produces 80%. That's the general Pareto principle, or Pareto distribution, as we will call it. Now, I'm going to continue to make this video, and This is a conversation here, so I'll be interested to see what others have to say in response to this, if anybody sees this. So what I'm not bringing on here is the idea that is the square root of a number that produces 80% of the work, not 20% produces 80% of the work. So with that in mind, if we're going to look at this Pareto Principle and we're going to apply it to wealth in America among the 320 million people producing wealth or retaining wealth, whatever. Well, let's just say retaining wealth, the wealth that they have been able to hold on to. How about that? Let's just do that. I don't know. So 320 million people. That means that the square root of 320 million is 17,888. 17,888. Now I'm going to do something here, and that is I'm going to divide that. If I do this right, I'm going to divide that by 3, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 equals. So that is not 1/10. That is not 10%. That's not 1%. That's not 1/10 of 1%. That's not 1/100th of 1%. That is 1/1000th. That is 5 1,000ths of 1%. Yeah. Account for 80% of the wealth in America. So that whole, that whole 99% thing, that 1% thing, yeah, the 1%'s 3.2 million people. Dude, 3.2 million people. They ain't in that 18,000 club. Okay? That 18,000, that's 18,000 families, dude. That's what we're talking about here. For 18,000 families. And those families, man, they're the ones that give you most of your most of the leaders that you see around you, whether they're the talking heads on TV or the CEOs of defense companies, defense contractors, whatever the case. The 18,000, they give you all those guys to varying degrees. But then, I decided I'm gonna dig a little deeper. And there it is, the square root of 17,888. And that's 133. 133 families. I believe that is probably close to the number. Maybe it's 100, maybe it's 200 families. But those 200 families, they account for 80% of the wealth amongst this group. Okay? So when you extrapolate that out, they account for 64% of the wealth of the whole country. 133 families really account for 64% of the wealth of the whole country. Those are your real owners. Those are real owners and managers. I don't know what kind of money they got to be controlling, what kind of wealth they got to be controlling to be in that club. But we're talking gazillions and gazillions. Like, I'm not even sure that Donald Trump is quite within that 133 families. Could be though. I'm not saying he's not. I suspect he is, actually. But definitely, first of all, he probably would have been one of the nouveaux. I imagine the turnover within that inner circle is not very high. So if a nouveau arrived, even if it was 30, 40 years later, they would still be viewed as the nouveau riche, which you look down upon, because you don't want too many nouveau riche, because that means that there's more competition and that you want to hold on to things. So there you go. Square root of 17,888. Now, that's 133 families, and I thought that, what the hell? Let's divide that by 320 million. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And we hit enter. Okay, now that's 4.17 with 7 zeros. Okay, so I'm assuming that's 7 zeros. So we're going to go with the 7 zeros. The first 0 would be point, so that would be like a tenth. Second 0, that would be a percent. Third 0 would be a tenth of 1%. Fourth 0 would be a 1/100th of 1%. Fifth 0 would be 1/1000th of 1%. Sixth 0 would be 1/10,000th of 1%. And finally, the seventh 0. If I got this right, hopefully I did, and I'm sure if I didn't, you can correct me, but I believe that would put it at 1/100,000th of 1%. 4 100,000ths of 1% control 64% of the wealth. And I'm willing to bet that even though it's 64%, that the type of wealth that they control, that it really makes everybody outside of that club really dependent on the decisions that the 133 make. Unless, of course, outside of that world, you are not so wholly dependent on the mega structures and the large-scale systems that these 133 families have worked so hard, probably through generations upon generations in many cases, to preserve the power of the true America. The United States of America, the real Americans, are really only the members of those 100 and some, whatever, whether it's 100 or 200, whatever families. That's it. And those 200 families just, we don't even know who they all are. I don't know their names. They're largely unaccountable every once in a while. A few of them like to cock it around, but outside of that, mostly, I imagine most of them really enjoy not being known. They're the ones that are behind all the latest rages that you see fluttering across your digital universes. And the only real powers that they have over you are really well, I think the only real power that they have over you is actually ideational. Now, the ideational power that they have over you has extended into other fields, most assuredly. Right now, they have tremendous demonstrable power over you. You cross their way and they don't like what you're doing, they'll yank your chain. You'll be done. They don't even have to kill you. They can just kill you through the markets now because they have consolidated enough power and they have enough people dependent on their systems that it's much easier for them to do that now across a much wider sphere of influence than they ever could before. Basically, if you lived outside the cities, you could kind of keep away. But now, even if you live outside the cities, you can't necessarily keep away. So, 133 families, 20 million people. And all those 320 million people bickering at one another, not even paying no mind whatsoever. Never mind. I mean, could you at least look at the 17,888 families and what the fuck goes up with them? Because you believe you me, man, those 17,888 families across this country, those families represent the real owners and managers of the many fiefdoms around this country. They've all been given their little places to be the de facto rulers of whatever regions. But anyway, so I thought you'd find this interesting. It's the Pareto Principle. Whether I'm applying it accurately or not, I'm going to go over this video again. I'll see if I will keep it up no matter what, but I'll see if I end up making another video follow-up, or maybe I'll make a video up calling up saying, you know what, after everything I looked at, I think I'm right about this. So if the Pareto Principle is true, as I heard it from Jordan Peterson, and I tried to, all that math, you guys saw all that math, I don't even know what any of that is. Does all that mean what Jordan Peterson said? I have no idea. Now I'm going to have to dig deeper. I'll probably have to watch that video too. Do that. But at any rate, I think it makes sense to me. I'm kind of see things like that in my life, that the larger the groups, the smaller the percentage of really active doers. It basically is what it comes down to. Well, no, it doesn't come down to that, because Pareto Principle doesn't just. I'm thinking more of some of the groups that I've actually been a part of, taken, managed, created, or otherwise observed from the inside, because somebody else I know managed and or created these groups. And I definitely noticed that the smaller the group, or the larger the group, the smaller the percentage of people. But you still end up with way more people that do really good stuff, but the percentage is always smaller. So I think there's a lot of truth. It makes sense to me. And if that's true, then I think that I can estimate 100 to 200 families, roughly, really are the masters, the owners, and they're the owners. The 130 families are the owners. The 17,888 families, they're the managers. The 133 families, this is the king in the court, except that they're kind of a republic, I imagine. They have some sort of weird republican form of governance. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't think they have a king. I don't know what they're seeing. Oh, that would be wonderful. Boy, that'd be an interesting book, too. Somebody write, just make it up. The secret government of the 133, some crap like that. Secret government. Not 200. Yeah, that sounds like a good number. Anyway, as Sticks and Homer always says, that is all. Peace out. I don't know. I like his. I don't think I can do that. I think my sign off is goodbye.